Hello, my name is Julie. I'm Robyn's oldest daughter. I want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to get started here. Wolf is going to lead us off.
Hi y'all, thanks for coming. I know Robyn would appreciate seeing y'all here.
You mean is appreciating seeing us?
Is.
She is appreciating.
Good point.
That's the crowd we are here.
And as a favor to the other people here, could you please turn your phone on vibrate or off? And if you get a lot of calls, we'll be able to tell you're getting those calls because you'll be going like this. Because I'm not a big fan of empty boilerplate prayer. I'm going to start out with a poem, which is a poem by John O'Donohue called The Death of the Beloved. Though we need to weep your loss, you dwell in that safe place in our hearts, where no storm or night or pain can reach you. Your love was like the dawn, brightening over our lives, awakening beneath the dark, a further adventure of color. The sound of your voice found for us a new music that brightened everything. Whatever you unfolded in your gaze, quickened in the joy of its being, you placed smiles like flowers on the altar of the heart. Your mind always sparkled with wonder at things. Though your days here were brief, your spirit was live, awake, complete. We look towards each other no longer from the old distance of our names. Now you dwell inside the rhythm of breath, as close to us as we are to ourselves. Though we cannot see you with outward eyes, we know our soul's gaze is upon your face, smiling back at us from within everything, to which we bring our best refinement. Let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find you in presence, beside us, when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When the orchids brighten the earth, darkest winter has turned to spring, may this dark grief flower with hope in every heart that loves you. May you continue to inspire us to enter each day with a generous heart, to serve the call of courage and love until we see your beautiful face again in that land where there is no more separation, where all tears will be wiped from our mind, and where we will never lose you again. That's this is one you could sing along with, actually. This next on the program is Amazing Grace, and almost everybody knows at least 4 or 5 of the words. I wrote it down just in case I forget. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less faith to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, and now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Y'all sound so beautiful.
So do you.
Well, at this point, I am going to turn the lectern over to Phil Sparks and for stories that he wants to tell and to allow you to tell your stories. So, Phil?
You know, I don't know most of you people. I see maybe 10% of you that I do know. But the fact that you gave up your Saturday and came here would certainly mean an awful lot to Robyn, and I know that the reason you've done it is because you love Robyn. If we had had more time and under different circumstances, we could have probably had 500 people to 1,000, easy. She knew people all over the world, and for me, she was probably the most influential friend of my entire life. We traveled together, many conferences. We slept in the same bed many times, as Alice can attest, saving money at conferences. And you know, I've got some pretty unusual stories with Robyn, and they probably won't surprise any of you because Robyn could go just about anywhere. And that's what I liked about her when I first met her, probably 28 or 30 years ago. It was at a dowsing conference, and she had brought Al Bielek. I had never seen Robyn before, but I was enchanted by that Georgia voice that she had and those beautiful eyes. And you know, after the lecture was over, of course, I had followed all this metaphysical stuff my whole life. That's what we initially had in common. But as soon as our eyes met, we realized we had probably spent numerous lifetimes together. And we hit it off instantly, and within weeks we were on our first conference trip together. We put about 2,000 miles on Renee's little new truck. Carol Dennis, it was a small little Toyota. Carol Dennis slept in the back on a mat. She had it made because the cab wasn't big enough for Robyn and all that stuff that she carried. You know about Robyn. When you got to a big Holiday Inn with Robyn and she unloaded, you had no space in the closet and no place on any piece of furniture in the room. You know that. It was unreal. But if you needed something during the conference, she'd have it in one of her bags, which was pretty cool. But Robyn was the most singularly unique person that I have ever met. And we, like I say, as soon as our eyes met, we realized that we could trust each other. We could go anywhere and say anything, and it wouldn't be a shock. It wouldn't be anything you had to explain. Because Robyn had done the research, and so had I. So I really tried to blow her mind if I could. It could not be done. Couldn't be done. And I think she would say that probably Phil Sparks has read at least as much as I have, because I can really get out there. I have put thousands of books away. Kept them all, actually. They went in the attic. But anyhow, on our first trip, we went to Arkansas to a dowsing conference, and of course she had made some phone calls before we left, and she was going to meet with a guy, a little fella in Winslow, Arkansas, that was channeling Nikola Tesla, supposedly. So we went to meet this little guy, and we won't go into a long story about that, but it was pretty evident. He did have some interesting things going on, but he was channeling Buford Tesla. And, you know, nobody cared. But it was real interesting, and, you know, the funny thing is that George Tavel ended up kind of being enamored with Renee, and he moved literally right beside us in a bear sanctuary under Mount Mitchell in North Carolina, which is where we live. And we put up with him for about 5 years till we run him off. But you know, Robyn would not wear her hearing aids. So for the past 20 or 25 years, she tried to convince everybody that she could read your lips, you know. But as soon as she would talk, join in the conversation, and it was totally out of the context of what everybody was saying. People would shake their head, and people that didn't know her thought, that woman just isn't right. I don't know if you know this, you probably guess it, but Robyn was a genius. She was a genius. Her IQ was 164. Yes. But, you know, that wasn't important to her, but the fact that she could go into all these different categories, all these different things. She kept a book in her hand, or under her seat, or in her bed, or in her car, or in the floor of the car at all times. When she come to stay with us, she would pop a light on at 2 a.m. and start reading till about 4 a.m. She was constantly exhausted because she read something all the time. For about the past 10 years, she started really abusing her books. She took them to bed with her. They used to be perfect. They looked just like this, no dog ears or anything. But Robyn willed me her library, and I had always said I would will her mine. So I had about 10,000 books. She had about 5,000 books. But when I got to looking at her books and how she had marked in those things, instead of underlining, she would cross right through the middle of the page. It was dog-eared. It had chocolate stains. It had, you know, just everything in the world in there. And I thought, wow, Robyn has changed, because she really respected her books. They were spotless for a long time. But she had to go inside and internalize so much of herself. And at conferences, I saw that people did not know the Robyn that I knew. And many times I told them, let me tell you something right now. I see the look that you're giving when Robyn talks about this and that. That woman is probably the sharpest individual in this entire conference. She knows more about any 10 things in this conference than anybody else in here knows about one. And I still believe that to be the truth. But anyhow, we got past George Tavel, we drove into Eureka Springs, and we went to a UFO conference that just happened to be taking place. So at that conference, I found a very rare book called the Crone Chronicles. It was taken off the shelf by the government, believe it or not. It was a true story by an experience a man had had in California, and I knew a little bit of history about the book and the fact that only a couple thousand copies had gotten out. So I found one, and that was up there in the town that Dolores Cannon lived, just right outside of Eureka Springs. So I bought that, and I'll tell you the rest of the story of that book in a minute, but first I want to say that's where Robyn introduced me to Dolores Cannon. So after this conference, we went to Dolores Cannon's little get-together place. It wasn't her house, but it was a place where people that she had been working with and regressing, influential people in metaphysics would meet like every Thursday or every other Thursday. Coincidentally, it was Thursday. So I got invited, Robyn and I, to go to Dolores's house, and she was channeling Saint Germain. And we got to watch this particular code that she, her and Robyn, of course, were hypnotherapists, and they were at odds with each other on who had the best technique. Both of them wouldn't speak to each other about business. It was just very huggy, how you doing? But really there was a lot of jealousy there. It was easy to see. But she was given a code by Saint Germain, and anybody that she regressed, she could use that code, and Saint Germain would come through, and at that particular time, he was doing an earth change map. And it was very, very similar to the scallion map, which some of you, I'm sure, know. But very, very interesting. But as we went around this small circle of people, Robyn had learned a little something about me on this trip, and she told Dolores, some of my interest, and so Robyn had made me speak out. I hadn't done that ever before, because when I was very young, I remembered several lifetimes. But I learned real damn quick that you don't tell people these sort of things. So I had shut all that down forever. And I just didn't feel like anybody had the brain power to listen to the truth. They were in this fantasy world, living it so profusely, that they just couldn't go there. But when I met Robyn, I saw somebody that, wow, she literally can understand what I'm talking about. Believe me, I can get out there. I can go so far out that Hubble can't find my box. I'm serious. And Robyn realized that. So between Robyn and Dolores, they talked me into being a speaker for Global Sciences, which was a really interesting thing for a long time, until Dean Stonier died, who had put this on for 20-some years. And so we lost our biggest forum for speaking about multiple topics when Global Sciences shut down. But Robyn and I traveled to many of those, and we met so many people that are in the metaphysics field, but also scientists, Bob Beck, Troy Reed. We went to see Troy Reed after we left Arkansas. Troy Reed, had built you may not know this, but he had built a magnetic motor, and that prototype of that motor is actually in the Smithsonian. He had a real device. He was killed shortly after that, because of that. But he had things that he had created with duct tape and wire, but they worked. I mean, I was there. He had healing devices you'd slip up over your arm. It was literally duct tape and copper and wire. He was channeling, according to him, some ETs. And of course, Robyn was very much into the ETs, and so am I. They're not always real visible, but you'd have to be pretty ignorant not to look at the evidence for them and recognize they're a reality. And the fact that people want to live in such a small portion of their brain, and they're satisfied to spend 70, 80, 90 years in that tiny little walled off section of brain, why would an ET bother, trying to divulge their self? But if you get back to the Crone Chronicles, we're driving from Arkansas through Missouri going into Oklahoma, and Robyn is reading me. I drove the whole way, 2,200 miles. Robyn is reading me the Crone Chronicles, so she's got her glasses down. She's holding this book, and she's reading, and it's quite interesting. I mean, she's putting all the inflection in it, all the stoppages. She's got a great voice. I mean, it was a book in review narration. So I'm enjoying it. It's keeping me awake. All of a sudden, she just shuts up, and I hear she's like this, scooted down in the seat. She just didn't say nothing. I looked over at her. She's, you know, her big bag is here, so she's literally on my shoulder, and you know, I could see that she was breathing real slow, so I just let her go. We drove 150 miles. I stopped for gas. I filled up. All of a sudden, she starts reading again, and she picked up at exactly the same sentence in that book, I swear. And so I nudged her and I said, so, Robyn, what's up with the big interruption? She goes, what? I said, well, you got quiet there for a while. She says, oh, I was just resting my eyes. I said, there's a sign coming up. I want you to notice it. And she knew that we were in Arkansas. Well, this sign was in the middle of Mississippi or Missouri. And she goes, what? And I said, right. I said, that's been like an hour and a half ago. But the fact that she held that book and picked up on the same sentence I said, right beside me is a character, for sure. So, we went to another Global Sciences in Denver. And that was the first time that I had spoken to a large group. There was 843 people. And, you know, I spoke and Robyn spoke. And, of course, Robyn would lecture to a cabbage patch. You know she would. As long as she had an audience of any kind, she loved to tell her story. And you know, we met some very strange characters. Al Bielek, of course, stayed at her house quite a bit. He was a really strange guy, but if you've never met him and talked to him personally, you would want to try to trip him up because he was a weird acting guy. He was one of those guys, kind of like a Tesla. He would shake your hand kind of like he didn't really want to do it, and if you kept your eye on him, he would turn as soon as he didn't see you, and he would be giving that hand that like you had been handling fish or something. Just kind of weird. But if you tried to trip him up on something scientific or something you know he had said 10 years ago, you couldn't do it. The man had something going on. And if you know the story, of course, he says he was regressed back into a 3-year-old child. And that's why he was not as old as he should have been to have been part of that 1942 experiment. But strange, strange characters. I notice a picture over here. A lot of people probably don't know who this one particular man is, but it was Bill Cooper. He was a really good friend of Robyn's, and Bill had that radio station. You know, Bill was killed by the local sheriff's department after a time. He was getting louder and louder and louder, kind of like Rush Limbaugh, but much louder, if you can imagine. And but him and Robyn were very, very good friends. And you know, I know a lot of stories about Bill, never having met him and talked to him personally. I know a lot about him just because of Robyn and I's talk. And of course, I'm sure you guys have that same sort of thing. She would, I know how she was with me. She could remember everything. She could remember the title, the author, of every book she had ever read. She was definitely a genius. The fact that a lot of the young members in her family probably don't know that, and because she couldn't hear, they might not know that their aunt, their mother, was an incredible genius, known and loved by people all over the world. So Robyn had wanted to try to regress me when I told her some of my stories. I've had some pretty incredible things happen in my life, and she couldn't do it, and Dolores Cannon couldn't do it either. They both tried quite a bit. So Robyn said, I've got one more technique that I want to try on you. So we were in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and there was a really soundproof, I need kind of no noise if you're going to try to regress me. I can't have, you know, Robyn had regressed, according to her, over 30,000 people there at the end. and her technique had got pretty sloppy. She'd sit on the edge of the bed and try to take you into an induction. She'd be bouncing around, she'd be pressing buttons on her recorder. She'd be saying, "Oh, darn," things like that, you know. And every time she would do that, of course, I'd be right back. And I kept telling her, "Robyn, you really need to get off of the bed. If we're gonna do this on the bed, you get on the couch and don't make any noise." So we tried over and over and over, but she said, "There's one more technique." So we went down in this guy's family room. Everybody else stayed up in the main part of the house, turned all the lights off, and she did this holotropic breath technique, if you've ever heard of that. If you haven't, remember this technique, the holotropic or the primitive breath, because we started that, and it's very time consuming. It's a certain way to breathe and a certain way to position yourself and to think, but once you get to this certain point, you literally leave your body, you truly do. So with a practitioner that knows how to do that, and you do have to have a facilitator, you could do some pretty remarkable things. So in this particular time, I'm a real physical kind of person. I lay a lot of big, heavy rock. I pick up a lot of really heavy things, or I have in my past. And at that particular time, I had just pulled the bicep loose from the shoulder. One head of the bicep had torn loose, and here it was down here. You do this, and it wasn't moving, see? So I had a surgeon friend I had let look at it, and he said, "Phil, yeah, I know you don't go to doctors, but that don't get better. That's like a rubber band that's broke. You got to go in there. I've got to pull that back up and attach it to the bone." I said, "No, I'm not going to do any cutting." Well, that next day, I was here with Robyn doing this technique. So I'm doing this, and suddenly I clicked in like some kind of light switch went off. And it was like I knew this technique and I knew its capabilities. And it just automatically, so I started changing the breathing, and Robyn starts talking. Oh, you're not supposed to stand up. That could be dangerous. You could fall over, you know. I'm thinking, "Please, Robyn, this is so cool. Please shut up." And, you know, I'm standing up, and she says, oh my God, there's light coming out of your hands." I said, "Robyn, shut up." You know, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking that. And so I literally invoked the Merkaba, is what I did, the light body. I packed my body full of light. When I got up to my arm, I cured that arm that night. The next day, I could pick up giant rocks again. The next day, there was no healing period. So that was one of the coolest things that Robyn and I had ever done, and I'll never forget that technique. The primitive breath, the shaman's breath, the holotropic breath, that sort of thing is what it's about. So, the last time I spoke at Sam Matthews, which was last June or July, very small group of people, because Sam had a bunch of health problems. His live-in partner was sick also, trying to take care of Sam, and they did no advertising. It was only like 15 or 20 people there. But it was probably my last lecture, because I had gotten so finicky, I guess, as I've gotten older. I just don't like travel. I wouldn't come back here for anything but this, for anything. So I think it was probably Robyn's last conference also, or not conference, but lecture also, because that evening, when she knew I was going to leave, she came to me, she says, "Phil, I feel like I won't see you again." I said, I went up to her, I was standing literally this close, grabbed her shoulders so she could read my lips. And I said, "Robyn, please don't get yourself all worked up about it." I'm holding her shoulders, I'm this close to her face. I said, "You and I will always be connected, and we'll do many things again together. Don't put yourself in a stressful situation thinking that you and I won't see each other anymore." I talked to her for 15 minutes. You know what she said when I got done? "What?" But, you know, it wasn't long after that, of course, that she was bedridden. And I tell you, if it wasn't for Warren, now this is, I don't know if you know this, but if it wasn't for Warren, we'd have lost Robyn 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. This is true. Warren is very much into health, and he had to ride her hard because you know how hard-headed she was. But he forced her to eat better. It didn't always work. She could do it for a few days. And he took care of her in a way that no one else would have. Hospice wouldn't have went to that detail. He learned definitely what it was like to be a white slave in the South. That's the truth. But, you know, thanks to Warren, she lived a little longer. But Robyn was just an incredible friend, just a unique someone. I don't know how many of the family are here, but the ones that are, you need to pass this on to your kids and show her pictures. What few writings that she did, you need to make them understand there is a world. There's multiple worlds, but there is one so different from the world that we live in here. So much more real. And if you got into it and understood it, it would give you every answer to every question that you've ever had. You wouldn't question anything. You would have zero fear. You know, Robyn had one fear that I'm aware of. It was only one. Other than she had to keep the lights on all the time. But she trusted me so much when we were together, she would literally turn all the lights off. Because I told her, Robyn, hey, I cannot sleep with that light on. Not even a wee little light. And I said, half of your problem that you're going around and doing this kind of thing all of a sudden is that you are chronically exhausted because you're not producing melatonin. Because you have never been in the dark, ever, until you come to see me. And that was the truth. But, you know, I don't know what else to say about her. I hope other people have spent time with her and have got some interesting stories. But the fact that you're here, you have to embrace, I have to assume that you embrace some metaphysical concepts to a degree. I hope you have time to get into them even more, because I'm telling you, the life we have created here is a total joke, actually. Tremendous waste of time and space. And your IQ will literally go up exponentially as soon as you start embracing more and more. You know, physics is now learned that consciousness is actually the key to creating everything. And everything that we see, everything that we touch, all reality has been created by consciousness. And that's what's been subjugated and subdued to a point that people are literally dumbing down. I just read recently, scientifically it's been proven, 4 to 6% loss of IQ every 20 years in the human race. Hey, you can see it. I swear, we're getting stupider by the day. You know, find a really interesting, well-presented subject on the computer, then go to the chat and read perceptions of what you just saw and understood. And you'll realize how hopelessly stupid we have become. So, you know, that's about what I've got to say, except one more thing. I told Robyn, not physically, I was writing a letter to her when she passed. In that letter, because he was giving me updates on how she was doing, and I knew that she was a little scared. Now, her big fear was a mouse. She has come to go with me Bigfoot hunting in that purple outfit and those flat-bottom black shoes to the middle of the mountain. She would go anywhere, do anything, but show her a mouse and she is wetting them bloomers. I'm serious. She would try to be funny about it. When she come to my house, she'd say, you want me to sleep in this room by myself? I said, well, yeah, Robyn, why not? There's all kind of books. There's a light if you want to read. Is there any Mises? She'd say it like that, and she would try to be cool about it, but really she was terrified. She wanted to sleep right beside you in case of mouse. I said, no, I don't allow Mises in the house. But I was writing her a letter, and I said, Robyn, I want you to give me a sign. Give me a sign that only you and I would know. With the experience that we have together, please give me a sign from the other side before you get so involved you don't have any attention to put on us. Let me know by giving me a sign. I didn't tell her what it was, but something only her and I would know. I didn't share it with Julie either. So I'm at Robyn's house in November the 12th, picking up her books. I'm done. I reach and grab my suitcase and put it in the back seat, and that bicep pulled loose with my suitcase. And here it is down here at the elbow again. That was Robyn. Robyn doing that. I spent the night in her bed, didn't get any kind of message from Robyn, didn't dream about Robyn. I also have not dreamt about her in this whole year. I don't know why. Don't know where she's at and what she's doing, but she ain't messing with me no more. But that's okay. But I hope somebody else will come up and tell a story about Robyn.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
I think you kind of hit a lot of salient points there. I'll verify the terror of mice. Okay, one time we were in the basement, she was down there, I was probably about maybe 10 years old, and she was pulling stuff out of the cabinets, rearranging. I got kind of bored, and finally I decided to play a trick on her, and I yelled mouse. And she flew off that ladder and started screaming. So she was terrified. Anyway, I want to invite anybody and everyone, if they want to come up and say a little word about my mother. Just
Well, I got some show and tell. And Phil, you just did such a great job. Oh my God. So I was going to talk about how intelligent she was, but you captured it beautifully. I do have to say one story. So I'm doing this paper. I can't stand the neurobiological approach to humankind. It's ruined all of psychology, which kind of takes your intelligence and all your capacities and reduces them to the tissue, right? Not my thing. So I call up Robyn. I said, Robyn, I need that reference. There's this reference, actually, of where it started with a college student that had died, and suddenly, and they did an autopsy, and the doctor had the family in and said, I'm so sorry you've lost your son, but I know that you're kind of happy that it's over, because of course he was a vegetable. And they said, our son was studying mathematics at MIT. And the doctor said, but he has no brain. There was just tissue around fluid, a thin layer of tissue. Of course, he had a cerebellum, he could walk, he could be coordinated. I said, Robyn, where's that reference? She said the name of the book, which I have forgotten, and the page. It was page 111, I remember that. And she said it's in the middle of page 111. So I copied it and used it for the presentation. So, okay. Robyn was a lot of fun. If anything, she was a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoyed her intelligence so much, but as you all know, you were invited to those many, many dinner parties, and the food was out of sight because besides all this other stuff she was such a great cook and a gourmet cook. So I think we should have named those gatherings salons because she would have loved that. And that's what they were. People just shared ideas. You didn't play any music there, like most parties, because people were talking, and what a great gathering it was of everyone outside of the box. That's who came to Robyn's parties. This part. This is something Robyn gave me, and it is perfect. It says, best friends forever. Now, other women in the room, don't worry, she was best friends with everybody. But I happened to get this wonderful thing. Oh, it is perfect about Robyn and you and me, right? There's a book. Just like Phil was saying, there has to be a book. There's a little coffee cup. So we were always meeting at Starbucks or somewhere just to have some coffee, and I'm sure you all did that too. And then we could talk, right? Hopefully quietly. I've had people eavesdropping on the weird conversation before, but now the clothes. Oh my God! So, and the jewelry. Don't forget the jewelry. Look at the jewelry. She's got jewelry around her neck, all kinds of trinkets on her, all this kind of stuff. There was a bond with Robyn about shopping. So, the favorite places were, and I just went to it in her honor. What's the name of it? Attic Treasures. Yep. And they had all the name brands, which I didn't know anything about, but she knew the name brands. Boy, she said, look at this pair of shoes. This is a $400 pair of shoes for $5. So we had to get it, of course. And then the other thing she would do that I just loved, the other place was called My Favorite Place, and it had furniture. The odd thing was, and it was fabulous furniture, designer furniture, weird stuff, artistic stuff. She'd call me, Alice, go down there. There's a couch you've got to have. Well, half my stuff came from Robyn calling me and me going down and getting it because you knew it would be tasteful and elegant and wonderful, right? When she died, that place collapsed. It was horrible. I went one time and I never, something was going on there that it just kind of folded. It was always an adventure being with her. So we would go to France several times, and she conducted her own goddess tours. We did a the Black Goddess, I think that's what, Black Madonna tour, and went to Barcelona, all of that. She was like a wonderful tour guide, and it was always about the mysterious. What I would say of Robyn is that she bowed to the mystery. Yeah. And, I wanted to add with all this stuff, style was everything to her. If anyone had style, it was Robyn. She had style. And it rubbed off on those around her, and I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for that. One time, I don't know how she met him, but she knew everybody. She had the physician to the Dalai Lama come, and she wanted to use my house. I said, sure. I had a big house in Lock Island. And he treated people there. And his name was Dr. Dundon. And if you study stuff about cancer, he's one of the best because he had a whole treatment program for cancer. Of course, when he brought it to the U.S., and it was these strange little pellets that look like rabbit pellets, what you feed rabbits, but they're hard as rocks. It was really hard to ingest them, even though we all bought them. Oh, and what happened when Dr. Dunwood was there, this is very strange. He said, do not drink coffee. No one can drink coffee. So Robyn and I quit on you'll get cancer if you drink coffee. We quit on the spot. 25 years later, Robyn calls me and said, you know what, Alice, I'm drinking coffee. So was I. To that day, I quit for 25 years. She quit for 25 years. Suddenly, one week, we started drinking coffee. I hear it's really good to prevent Alzheimer's. Maybe that's what it was. But, okay, back to Dr. Dunnan. So, it was a wonderful adventure. He saw clients in my basement. I had a big basement. He could be separate from the rest of the house. And when he arrived, it was winter, and a red hawk had died suddenly, right in front of us. And he said, this is very propitious. It's a very good sign. Well, you can't have red hawk feathers, right? I think it's illegal. It's like having an eagle feather or something. Well, we were not going to let that dead bird go unappreciated. So she said, I tell you what, bring it down to me, and I'll meet you at Neiman Marcus. And so I had a Neiman Marcus bag and the illegal red hawk and in the bag, and I go to meet her, and we are both cracking up and being like we're, spies doing something really. I love that about her. Let's see. Stuff you may not know about her. You said she could go anywhere. That was absolutely the truth. Robyn loved camping, so she could go to the Ritz and enjoy that. And she could be in the most primitive camping that you can imagine. So one of the primitive campings was the boogie. And the boogie was so unlikely for both me and Robyn. It's a big drug fest. She enjoyed it anyway, and I brought the other show and tell. This is her boogie hat because the guy that was running the section we were in was into Area 51. So she's got Boogie Virgin on the hat, style, always style, and UFO beings all over it. So I wanted you to know that. And one time, I had another camping deal. I had kind of inherited this rustic and a dooming rustic place on Lake Altoona. So I said, Robyn, you gotta come up. So he said, sure, we'll come up. So she and Roy came up, and another person came up. The other person was appalled. This is dusty, it's dirty, it hasn't been fixed. Have you brought us up here to clean? Which I hadn't. I was slightly oblivious to it, you know. It was just a crummy old cabin place. Robyn and Roy both of them, they were just fine. They were camping out in my crummy place. It didn't bother them a bit. They went swimming, they had a good time. So this is how Robyn was. She was so incredibly complex. And we would, let's see if there's anything else. Let me think if there's anything else at all. Oh yeah, just one other little story. So I'd have parties too. So Robyn had to come, right? Well, I'm very strange. I don't like to cook. I really hate to cook. I can't stand it. I'm not a really great hostess. Like, can I get you a drink? Would you like some food? It's like you get to my party, time to talk, right? So I would fade into, oh, let's talk about this interesting stuff, right? Mom would say, Alice, she'd come in the front door every time. Alice, where are you? You know, are you gonna get this out? Are you gonna get that out? And she'd kind of slip into taking over to be the right kind of hostess, you know. So anyway, we'll miss her terribly, and there's probably a lot more to say, but I wanted to fill in the girly kind of stuff. Phil almost didn't miss things at all, but yeah, what a great friend and what an unusual, incredible person. We'll all miss her.
I'm Robert Galanti. I've had the honor of being Robyn's friend for 30 years. And we've had lots of good facts and stories. I'm going to just do a little prose poetry. Just some ideas. If there were a picture in Webster's dictionary with the definition of friend, it would have been Robyn. Everyone in this room, and then multiplied by 10, she was the ultimate friend. If you look at the parts of the body, the organs and the fingers and the ears, and what part of the body was Robyn? You all know what I'm about to say. Robyn was heart. She was the ultimate in heart. And there's an expression, walking the walk and talking the talk. Lots of us talk the talk. Robyn also walked the walk. And the kind of a personal sense that I have is, you know, we can question ourselves. We do this through our whole lives. Are we good? Are we bad? Are we weak? Or are we strong? Are we kind? Or are we unkind? And if there was something in my life that reinforces to me any sense of goodness which I possess, it was the blessing of Robyn having come into my life and having stayed in my life for these 3 decades. And there might have been one other thing I was gonna, Alice, what you said about her parties. That is so true. She was the source of salons. She would just and that's about it. I'm gonna just kind of be short, but we all, if you talk about the word missing someone, and really kind of think about it, wow, I kind of miss this person. This person was so wonderful for me. Robyn would be the person although we all have our lives and we go on about and we stay busy, but just the experiences we had, the things we did, and the experience of Robyn, even though we can kind of have it in spirit, but we miss Robyn.
I'm Dick Darnell. Well, I'd like to thank Robyn for, I've known her since the mid-70s, Portico, the indoor stand-up restaurant in the back there at Piedmont Road. Most of you know that. And Portico was incredible because on one side we had a stand-up restaurant of fast foods with Phil Mulkey and Terry, myself, and Julie was there. Last time I saw Julie, she was 13. And still is. And Robyn would be over here making the gourmet sandwiches. And she did about near half as much as over here, but over here people would come up to us because we were all very psychically actualized and kicking. So people would come up and we'd bam, read them, stuff like that. And then they would have their order, whatever. And it was a successful time, very successful, happy time, that whole flea market thing. And she had her antique booth just across the way, just incredible taste and inventory for the many times she did have a antique something. She had incredible taste. But we had a first occasion, I'll do a couple, three things, where we went to Virginia Beach to Russ Michaels. He had a 4-day class or something like that near Edgar Casey's thing, and that went real well. We had a real good connect on that, and with Russ and everything, and we got Doctor of Divinities off of that, which was registered with the state of Virginia. So we had our DDs. That was cool. But I do give thanks to the many times through the decades of when Robyn was cooking. There's a thing going on, no problem. 150 miles, no problem. I'm coming. And did. And she also, I thank her because she introduced me to a lot of folks. She did a lot of events that she organized and conducted. Big crowds, big scenes. You all know about that through the decades. And that's where I met Billy Cooper and Al Balick, who became a buddy in his last years. Wanted to live with me, but he was such a fuss budget, you know. Same for her, you know. She and I talked on, though we just can't quite, you know. But we all loved Al, and but I thank her for that also, the food and the many people she introduced me to, which helped my, I wouldn't say career, but life and practice of, because my base point has been through masonry, and my adeptship and stuff like that to the Masonic order, recognized as such. And then there is one thing though I do share, that about 7 years ago, when Eva heard, and Eva wishes she was here, but she's on a deadline of writing a screenplay. She wishes she was here, but she's under a contract. But she still had her house in Dunwoody. And it was about 7 years ago. So Robyn was like 70, 78. And, you know, she was eternally beautiful through all these decades. She was like, how do you do this? And even though the hearing was going and all that stuff. And so it was on the weekend, and she came over on a Sunday, nice day, and was sitting in the dining area, and I was over in the kitchen area fussing around with breakfast stuff or doing something in the stove area. And Zach, the oldest boy, was there with a couple of his buddies. And Zach was a real ladies' man. I mean, he was this guy. I mean, girls were phoning him 9 a.m. to 1 in the morning consistently, to the point where Eva would not answer the phone, or landline. So he's there with a couple of his buddies, and I'm looking over there, and Robyn's sitting there waiting for Eva. We're going to go do something or whatever. She's sitting there looking good. And the boys just started, you know, saying nice things to her and stuff like that, and just this whole thing going on. And Robyn's just, you know, being cool, and, you know, being Robyn. You know, then after a while, they laughed out. And I said to her, Robyn, you just had 3 21-year-olds fire down on you. how old are you? So that's a testament, and the legacy continues. My God, still 13. And the food, that's Robyn's recipe stuff. Robyn taught you. I know that.
That credit goes to Wanda.
Well, and I'm on top Wanda too. I know that. So I give thanks and of course equally a lot of love for Robyn, and we celebrate an icon. She helped us all with our paths and our journeys, as well as being part of our journeys for decades, and she does live on. So I want to say something, because I love Robyn too. A lot of good times. Next.
Hi, I'm Janice Williams, a very good friend of Robyn's. To be a pleasure all my life to know her from 1980. How I met her was all of a sudden my kundalinis blew open. I moved to Atlanta and something just happened. And I didn't quite know what to do with it. So we decided, my family and I, my mother and my sister, and all of us decided to go down the foundation of truth to find out how to protect myself, shut them down, get some knowledge. And of course, who do we meet? First person right out of the gate, Robyn. She took us in as a family. That's the way she was. She never met a stranger. No one was a stranger to her, ever. She had the biggest heart, as you know. Love, 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 compassion, kindness. I know you all touched on all the good points of intelligence and genius, but I'm going to touch upon the heart and the soul and the embodiment of her selflessness that walked in a room and she owned it. She owned it with her energy. And we all felt it, like a big wave of energy that went over us, and we didn't know. And then when we met her, we knew when she spoke, and she gave us herself so much. She emptied her cup into us all and gave us her jewels to take away and learn by. She was just incredible. I would call her it doesn't even describe her, the quintessential goddess of each decade that she ever lived, because she was well out of the box, well out of her mind, and well opened up to a world that I wanted in on. I had been tiptoeing into that world all my life, but she brought me so far in, I can't get out, and I love it. And I love her. She took my mother, my sister, all my children. She used me as a guinea pig for her regression, because I was so easy to hypnotize and go with her. And we played and we played. We'd go up to cashiers and we'd have seances, and we'd regress down to our homes, our lives in Atlantis, and all the experiences. And I was a real good visualizer, so I could write it all down, what I saw, what we did. And there was 12 of us. And of course, Atlantis, the head of Atlantis, the cities were 12. And we just delved into the another total dimensions, all the dimensions there were, the worlds. It was incredible. 1980, can you imagine? I mean, they're just coming out with it in books now, but 1980, we were doing it, like you said, walk, walk, talk, talk. Boy, did she ever. Well, but I was a little scared. I just had to, Rick and I'd meet, and we'd whisper to each other, like, because you couldn't put it out there. And if you did, you were ridiculed or whatever. But she had after our meeting, we'd all decided to have a meeting at her home each week. And we went into the channeling and the meditations and all kinds of wonderful, wonderful places to go. And I mean, you didn't even have to have a ticket on a jet. You went there out on that universal trip in each dimension with Robyn. And always her shoulder was on me, always. what can I do for, what do you need? What does your family need? I mean, she was just incredible. She invited my whole family over for this weekly meeting that we had. And then Robyn and I were involved in Unity and also the Course of Miracles, which we taught together, and I mean, not taught, but facilitated, to be correct. And she was easy to love, easy to forgive, easily the best of person that influenced my life as well as your own. And she's still influencing us because her spirit's huger now. It's exploded and it's so big. We all are just, the healing balm is just coming over us with her. And I can feel her and sense her in every part of my body. Thank you.
It's really interesting to look around the group and see how many people that I have known or met because of Robyn. I searched through my memory, which is not as good as it used to be, to identify when I first knew Robyn, and I'm pretty sure that it was in 1984 when I went to a spoon bending session that she conducted along with Oscar Maricosada, who some of you probably know as well. And as a result of that meeting with Oscar, I ended up going to Peru with him shortly thereafter on a really wonderful trip. And you know, listening to people talk, it's amazing how many of us have connections at various levels. There was a TV show last night. I guess there are no coincidences, but this was about reincarnation in great depth. I don't know whether any of you ever watched Josh Gates on Expeditions Unknown, but one of the people he interviewed was Dr. Eben Alexander, who wrote a book and was in a coma for many days, and you know, he was a neuroscientist, a neurologist, and talks about. I'd never seen him interviewed before, but he talked about the beautiful sights and people that he met on the other side while he was in the coma. And you know, and I can envision Robyn very easily experiencing that kind of thing, as I think she, in many ways, experienced in her daily life. I saw Robyn last with Warren about, I think about a week before she died, and took some lunch over to her, and she was failing, but she was still very coherent. I think of the trip to France, which I was part of a small group that went to Rennes-le-Château, and then we went to the three Marys, arriving back in Saint Marie de la Mer. And there I ended up getting my billfold pickpocketed with $1,200 in it. And being stranded there temporarily with no money, no credit card. And it was Robyn that morning of the trip there that just insisted that I take my wallet out of my back pocket and put it in the pocket, in the leg pocket, which had a Velcro flap. And of course, it's there where the gypsies got my billfold. And you know, I feel like choking Robyn for having me lose $1,200. But it was another doorway. It was another opening to something that Robyn and I talked about going back, and I know she was there several times, and would have loved to have gone back again. I can't help but remember, I've known Alice at least as long as Robyn, and about 12 or so years ago, there'd been a long gap between
seeing Alice and whatever, and I was on a trip down the Nile in Egypt with John Anthony West, and he was giving a lecture on the boat, and off to the side was a small group that was not attached to our group, and somebody said that someone was from Atlanta, and I walked over and looked around the group, and I said, "Who's from Atlanta?" And of course, I looked around, and it had been probably 10 or more years since I'd seen Alice, and there she was, and we both knew that we knew each other, but we couldn't remember who the other person was. You know, the memories at her house, the dinner parties, the cooking, the number of people here that have been influenced by Robyn, and the number of things, books and articles and whatever that have been passed from me to Robyn and from Robyn to me, and you know, toward the end there was a book that I had given Robyn that was a one of a kind, or I'd loaned to her, and of course it fell into the black hole that was kind of Robyn's house, and never to be seen again. But you know, it was so interesting last night listening to this doctor talk that had been on the other side, and listening to him say things, many of which I'd heard Robyn say, and you know, I thought it was just so ironic that this show came on, and then we were having the memorial the next day. And I can't help but say, my youngest brother died about 22 years ago, took his own life, and weeks or months before he died, we had several conversations about dreams that he had had, and dreams of being on the other side, and just how wonderful, how clear they were. And he said to me more than once, he said, why would I choose to be here when I could choose to be there? And you know, it's as you said earlier, we're dumbed down. We're not seeing what's there in many cases, and it's so hard to find somebody else to talk with about something like that. Like I could and did have many, sometimes lengthy conversations with Robyn, and she understood it all. I mean, she understood it all, and like somebody said, she could go any place in the world and be right at home there. She was amazing in that respect. So anyway, good to be here.
I'd like to share just a couple tidbits. I met Robyn in 1986. I came down from Clearwater, where I lived, with a group from Unity. And I've always been interested in the mystic and how the mystics walked on fire and how they handle all this good stuff. Because my mother always thought I was a little weird. And I've been. Thank goodness. But anyway, this group, Edwin Gaines was putting on a seminar at one of the upscale hotels. And I met Robyn. And we sort of hit it off. And I was in the process of selling a business in Clearwater. And I sold the business and I came to Atlanta. And I spent a couple years with Robyn. She was my teacher. I learned so much because even though I have a college degree and I have no biology and I know chemistry and I know how to run a business, but Robyn put it down to earth. And I learned so much from her. It's interesting that Julie just called me the day before yesterday because I was thinking about Robyn. Because we would go to lunch, because we sort of separated for a couple of years. I was building another business here in Atlanta, and Julie called me. Robyn passed away. I couldn't believe it, because she was a health nut. And I followed some of her teachings and what she believed in, and it worked. Hey, I'm 84 years old, take no pharmaceuticals and work every day. And stay away from doctors, they'll kill you. So anyway, Robyn was really an inspiration in my life. And I gotta tell you another thing. At 84, you have a little problem pulling it out, you know. That's Korea. Okay? But anyway, Robyn's a wonderful person. I call her one of a kind. She was my teacher, and I loved her dearly. Thank you very much.
Hi.
Oh, I forgot to ask one thing. What happened to the parrot?
Died days before.
Mother did.
He did what?
Died
Passed
before
away.
she did.
She died.
Really?
Days before.
Oh my gosh.
So they're together now.
Yep. So I'm Gail Mack, and I too have known Robyn forever and ever, and I moved up here from Florida, and one of my friends said, oh, come with me, we're gonna go to lunch, and I've got a friend that is right up your alley, and I said, okay. So we're in Robyn's house, and we're sitting there, and I'm on the couch, and I'm watching these people walk through the walls, and she says, what are you doing? And I said, you've got a lot of people coming through here. And she said, well, how many have you seen? And I said, about 8, maybe 10. And she goes, oh, it's a slow day. And I knew I was in the right place because she was like a reflection of me. And we did the Black Madonna tours in France for many years, and she was, we experienced things like in Spielberg movies, and then, you know, it was great to have somebody who understood things. And Robyn, so intuitive. We had one night in, like at the base of Rennes-le-Chateau, I had this dream of clearing the ages, and there was transmuting through me, and it's like all this suffering and healing that was coming through, and I screamed out, and I sat up in bed, and there was, I don't know, 3, 4 people that were in the room, and Robyn looked at me and she said, you okay? And I said, did I scream out? And she said, no, you didn't make a sound, but when you sat up, she said, I heard it. But my throat was raw. And the next day, we went to a surprise place, and we were walking this land, and we were going to go talk to this woman, Bridget. And and she had a little commune there. So as we were walking the land, I stepped on this place, and I stepped back, and I stepped again, and I got locked in to the earth, and I couldn't move, and I started to process the suffering of the ages. And Robyn looked back at me, and she knew exactly what was taking place, and she came and put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, I got you. And then 5 people came over and put their hands on the shoulder, and then they each connected, so we were this 5-pointed star, and I was in the center. And we processed the ages, and the ground was shaking, and everybody was weeping, and this woman comes running down the hill, and she comes running up, and she said, what are you doing? And I went, shifting some energy. And she said, you rolled me right out of my bed, and I sleep on a futon on the floor. And that was Bridget, and it was her place. And she had been for years trying to heal the suffering and the wounded energy of her land. And it was coming through, and the people that would come to heal, they were reflecting, and they couldn't quite get a handle on that depth, and it was cleared in that day from all of us. And then she said, come over here, I want to show you something. And Robyn said, oh, this is good. She said, I'm going with you. And she just looped her finger in my belt loop. And wherever I went, there was Robyn, and she was coming with me, and it was like down this little steep thing. And what had happened like a week before is they had a little mudslide, a little ground shifting, and this doorway opened. And when they walked through the door, it was a chapel of Mary Magdalene that had been covered, and it was unearthed the week before we came. And we weren't supposed to be on that trip, but
Robyn had connected with somebody who said, oh, you need to go, Bridget has someplace, we need to meet this woman Bridget, and that's how, you know, things with Robyn, they just unfolded. And we, on one of those trips, I became a bus driver, and we were sitting at the airport, and MJ said, who drives a stick shift? And I said, yeah, I do. And she said, okay, you're the bus driver. So I was the bus driver of 16 people on this tour in France, and it was like, you know, some of those roads just barely fit one car, and we would be on the very edge. It was kind of scary, and Robyn was really good at directing people and making sure that the bus was had even amount of people when we were going up to Andorra and stuff. There's so many things. I flipped out what I was going to say, but on one of the trips, I said, Robyn, you left your shirt on the bus, and she said, oh, that's a beautiful shirt, but that's not my shirt. I said, yeah, Robyn, I saw you take it off, and you laid it over the seat. This is the one you've been sitting in. No, it's not my shirt. And she said, well, just hang on to it. Someone's going to come claim it. So I started wearing her shirt, and about 3 years later, she looked at me and she said, you know, I had a shirt just like that. I know, Robyn, I've been trying to give it to you for 3 years. She said, well, it looks better on you. So, Robyn, I love her dearly, and I'm so grateful that she was part of some of the most spiritual, some unnerving experiences that I've ever had, but mostly they were all rooted in the heart, and just beautiful experiences, and I'm just grateful that I'm here and able to share with all of you. And thank you. I love you all because you love Robyn.
Hi. My name is Mallory. I'm one of Robyn's many grandchildren. We called her Nana. She was one of the most brilliant yet crazy people I've ever met. That's the best way I know how to describe her. She's brilliant, crazy. She's full of life. She was a shot of life. She really was. Funny story, you know, Gabriel and I are about the same age, Julie's oldest son. And we just thought it was hilarious that Nana believed in aliens and UFOs, like we could never be possible ever in our little child minds, which is, I don't know how many of you have met Gabriel, but he's about as strong of a personality as we all are in the family. But we decided it would be funny to conspire and tell Nana that we had the same dream about being abducted by aliens. And we thought we were so clever. We got our stories straight. We said, Nana, this happened. We had the same dream. It was so real. And immediately she starts checking our necks for microchips. And we just think that we're hilarious, and then she really started to scare us because we were children and we didn't know exactly what we were even dabbling in, messing with something like that. But I'll never forget, we actually never told her. She
Probably in her case files.
It probably is. But she was never a conventional grandmother, which I thought was amazing, you know? And I didn't know that it was so special until I got older, and I wish that I had more time to cherish with her as a child, because I feel like you have a more open mind as a child, and she's the epitome of an open mind. There are no words to describe her. She's just Robyn. Thank you.
I've got one more story. She prompted me, she made me remember something so funny. Wait till you hear this. As smart as she was also very childlike. I mean, so naive that you would think, what? something happened. The biggest, if you can imagine, the biggest spaghetti squash that you have ever seen. All right, you know how you jab them before you bake them so that the steam will come out and they won't split? The way Renee had done this, I'm very artistic. I opened up the refrigerator, she put it in there, and I saw eyes and a mouth. So I got this idea. I teased Robyn incessantly, all the time, because I loved her so much. I doctored it up a little bit, made the teeth look better. I got out the magic markers, and I really did an artistic job on this thing. I took a big picture and I blew it up in two pieces. Robyn was coming a couple weeks later, and she was going to speak at Gulf. What is it, Gulf, Florida?
Gulf Shores.
Gulf Breeze. Gulf Breeze. All right. I just kind of made sure that they were laying around. She looks at that. She says, "Phil, what is that?" She gets it up, puts some glasses there. "What do you think that is?" I said, "Well, Robyn, it may have been the only one in existence, but I was carrying a rifle. It was hunting season. This damn thing rolled down off the hill, and it was growling through those nasty-looking little teeth. And before I recognized what I'd done, I shot the shit out of it." So she says, "Oh my God, could that have rolled out of a UFO?" I said, "That's what I thought." She says, "Could I take this to Gulf Breeze? I'll be speaking there in 10 days." I said, "Yeah, why don't you do that? Because maybe someone else has seen one, and I won't feel so bad about killing the last one." I swear, I never heard another word about it, because you know what happened when she had it on her table. That looks like a spaghetti. Door been open.
I got one thing I forgot. Robyn and I did the firewalk.
Oh, I heard about that.
We had a group from Atlanta. We went down to Coral Gables, and there was about 100 there in church. It was put on by a lady from Stonehenge, and she says, "Let me tell you, there's no doctors here." And so they had stacks of wood stacked up, about 4 or 5 stacks, about this high, about this square. And she was facilitating for about an hour, hour and a half. We went outside. The coals had burnt down. They raked out the coals. It was probably raked down like this to that wall. And she says, "When you walk through there, you keep your mind in place." Robyn walked through and she got one little hot spot. I walked through and didn't get any. And I tell you, that made a believer out of me. That's quite an experience. I wouldn't do it again, but I tell you what, that was quite an experience. Really, unbelievable. Thank you.
I'll keep it short. I'm really thankful for Robyn and her influence on me. I came out of a fundamentalist background, and she helped me to see a bigger picture. But I also came out of a technological background, and I made a time machine called the Chronocraft, which I took apart 2 months ago. I think it was in '96. Robyn came to my house, and I opened the door, and these thoughts go through my mind, like, witch? And it was years later, I found out, when she first saw me, she thought, abductee? And I don't think I ever was. If I was, I don't know it. Anyway, she had friends that had been abducted, and she had the compassion and the will, after she found out that I had a chronocraft, to go back in time and stop that abduction. That was her idea. I said, well, great. I had bought the plans for that from Scotland, and I put it together, and it was, I had generated time loops and all this, and here comes Robyn, and she wants to stop an alien abduction. So she has traveled in more than cars and trucks and airplanes. Maybe it's a practical nature of her, but she gets in there. Now get this. She knows how to use it, how to run a time machine. I gave her a little indication, instruction, but she starts having a root chakra reaction that's the flash bulb type for Kundalini, over and over, getting this thing going. She's sitting there showing me techniques I never dreamed of on how to use it. She came in, she started using it. And she was successful in one sense. And that's one reason I wanted to say this, because the way everything's presented, it looks like she was really good at everything and it all worked perfectly and, you know, it was a bed of roses. Not this time. She actually did go back in time to when that abduction was. But stopping it wasn't to be. The Greys also had that kind of technology. And she was stopped by a Grey. It was the face of a Grey. And so whatever that was, maybe it was meant to be, but that stood as it was. If I said the people's names, you would probably know. I'll say, the person she was trying to save, the name starts with T. And I actually worked with him at work. And it had to do with new technology that had, where you could control things with thoughts. He was intimidated by people calling and telling him to shut up and all this. So she was actually going to do that for him. And she saw that, hey, here's a real time machine. It was basically what Buckminster Fuller would call an isotropic vector equilibrium, or in geometric terms, a cubooctahedron. And you could actually go inside of it. It took up most of the bedroom. And I used it to save my job. I'm going back in time and finding out about a password on a system I needed to rebuild. But that set up a time loop, and that system crashed 9 months later, but by then I had gained the skills to keep my job. And you could swap realms, universes, all kind of, but there she was in her amazing ability to sit down and use amazing techniques with the root chakra to run a time machine to save somebody from the graves. So she was actually more active than just hypnosis.
Good thing there was no mice in there.
Not in my house.
Here's a letter from Dale Long that she sent.
Oh,
And she wanted us to read it. Do you have glasses?
That was a treat.
I don't know, I'm Wanda, I was Robyn's daughter-in-law and slash daughter. I loved her and she was the most wonderful person, and one of the things that's mentioned, and here's what a terrific artist she was. A friend of hers from New York, Dale Long, I know probably every single one of you guys know her. Great, great spirit. Yeah. Well, just as greetings to you all, a few words about our dear friend and family member. Robyn was an but Enigma. Yes, thank you. But so loved by so many. We had a bond of our special teachings, Joel Goldstein, The Infinite Way, and spent many hours just talking. She was one of the most well-read, intelligent persons I have ever known. I learned a lot from her, a great cook and an artist. She was so generous always. welcoming her into her heart and home. She is missed. I wished I could be there for her going home salute, but we'll be in sync. Sending all my love and special memories, Dale. So just wanted to share that with everybody as well.
I'm sure most of you know who Dell is. I think one of her pictures is over there.
Right.
Well, I know probably everybody's not gotten a chance to share, but we have a little surprise, so we're going to go outside for a few minutes. If you have a coat, I suggest you put it on. We're going to go out for a moment of silence and send Robyn on her way. And then we're going to come back inside afterwards, and hopefully you'll share your stories with each other and have something to eat.
We're going to have food.
No.